All right. I think we have showtime. Welcome, everybody, to our show tonight. We didn't expect to have to do a episode three, but I tell you, we've gotten a lot of feedback from the failure episodes, and our first episode showing that failure crosses all levels of fighting in the SCA, and really in life in general. It was really a great discussion between the coaches and different people that actually lived in those spaces. And then our second one, we deep dived into, pieces of failure and learning and how to work through those things, how to set, essentially victory conditions and, growth mentality sets, all of these kinds of things that hopefully people would help understand those things going into the future. And I think that's a really important thing to have a foundation on that as, kind of as a martial artist is that if you have a good foundation on that sports science piece of what we're doing, the better you can look at where you are in it. As many of us just like, hey, if I win, then I'm good. If I don't win, I'm bad. That is far from the truth. And I'm hoping that last episode kind of points that out. And also even the first episode, when we have people that are dealing with failure that, are some of the top in the SCA. I mean, obviously they're not necessarily failures, but they're still dealing with it because they have to work through things just like everyone else. So, but on that point, we had a bunch of questions, and we didn't want to just kind of, a lot of times we have episodes where we can't answer all of the questions, but this is one that we didn't want to let go. And so we wanted to make sure that the questions got answered. And please, everyone, if you do have more questions, go ahead and throw them in comments, and we will pick them out of there and try to answer as many as we can. We are really going to try to burn through our kind of a list of questions. We probably have about 15 or 20. And but after that, or even during that, we will pull some questions that of course, the viewers are asking, because we really want to make it a great episode. And our best episodes are the ones that everybody participates in. So I'd like to first thank Guillaume for producing for us. Thanks, Guillaume. Tristan, good to see you again, brother.
You too, brother.
We haven't had a lot of time to talk lately, so
that's all right. Life is life.
Yeah, and then Helga has been giving me constant reading material, so and educating me on the way of doing its thing. So it's been a wonderful thing. And then me and Thorfinn have just been chatting aloft to the side. We're like long lost brothers from different mothers or something. So
something like that.
This guy, yeah, he's and we actually even talked. I don't know if people had a chance to watch it, but we did a really nice episode from Pennsic last year, West Camp, just sitting around, kind of having a discussion like we're going to have tonight. We had questions, we had answers, and we're going to hopefully do that same type of thing this year at Pennsic. So I'm looking forward to that. All right, so let's go ahead. Anybody else? Okay. Let's get started on some questions. We answered a couple of questions last week, only about 3. We would just kind of pulled a couple out that kind of fit a lot of the things we were talking about, and we really wanted to get answered. So I'm going to jump on to the next question in that line was around mentality or emotion. And I am going to post it in first so that everybody can see it. And I will apologize to everyone here. I usually am on my coach's page. Actually, if you can do this, Guillaume, pull from our list, number 4, and post it in there and then highlight it so everybody can read it on the page. That would be great while I go through it. Most of my failures or stagnation comes from being in my own head and feeling like an imposter, like I don't belong. Those around me have not done anything to cause this. It's me getting into my own head. So this is really, around, and I've seen this many times, around us limiting ourselves, because I think sometimes, either you don't believe you can, or you don't believe you can against the person you're kind of fighting with. So Who would like kind of jump on this one to start with? Because I'm going to say this is one of the biggest ones I see constantly, and it's actually one of the things I coach for constantly. It's not easy to go over, but confidence is a really hard thing to people. People teach a lot of physical techniques. Mental is a much harder place because you really have to make sure that they trust you, and you have to be trustworthy, and you have to build that trust with your students. So who wants to cover it?
Yeah, I
raise a hand. Yeah. All right, Tristan, all you.
Yeah, agreed. So many times, like I said, I've run into the same thing, not only with people that I've worked with coaching and worked as, just in my own practice, at a fighting practice, or even just myself. What it comes down to, the confidence thing, which is often related to self-esteem issues, could be, just even the fact of competing. And I didn't run into it as much in teaching martial arts in a dojo setting, because it didn't have the same really prevalent presence of direct competition. But when you have that direct competition, failure often seems like a personal condemnation, whether it's self-imposed, like you are hard on yourself for the failure that you encounter, or the lack of success, or the frustration. It's so common to focus it on, I'm just not good enough, or I'm not a talent. I'm not like these other people that seem to just pick this up really quickly. And it's so common for people to really beat themselves up because of it. But that's what I've seen. It's usually related to some kind of a confidence issue. And because SCA fighters often will basically train on their own. They're self-directed. A lot of them do not have mentors, which is kind of one of the major reasons of this whole channel, is to try to help people to get mentors or to become mentors and coaches, so that people aren't just, drifting through their SCA fighting experience on their own with just whatever they come up with. They can get help and get, tips and advice and guidance. So that's my 2 cents on where that often comes from.
So I think a lot of what we're talking about here with that being in your own head and feeling like an imposter goes beyond just SCA fighting. It's things that we face in all parts of our lives. And I think a lot of people feel alone in that. They feel like, I'm the only one that doesn't belong. I'm the only one who doesn't really know what I'm doing, and I'm sort of making it up as I go. And everyone else has everything figured out. And what you find out in life is that most people are going through that same type of feeling. There's some people that are 100% confident, they know what they're doing, they've got everything behind them, but so many people are making it the best they can. And it's a lot of where that notion of fake it until you make it comes from, in that if you act as if you know what you're doing, then you are putting that belief in yourself. And then you can work past that fear of not belonging and work towards, okay, how do I begin to develop, and how do I begin to move past some of this stuff? Getting out of your own head in a lot of ways is just believing in yourself enough to be able to accept where you're at right now and continue to work and see, okay, what do I need to work on and improve? Where's the deficiency? What can I do next?
So I like that term, where I'm at right now. A lot of times as fighters, we have these ups and down periods where success and failures, right? And I see people beat themselves up over the idea of, I wasn't where I used to be, or I had a break because of work or injury or whatever. And I think that being okay with where you're at today, we can always get better. That's our goal, is to move forward. But being okay with where you are today, and then saying, this is it. Tomorrow I'm going to try and do something more, is a big step forward in also kind of getting over that fear of failure, because we are all going to fail at in our martial art at some point. And I think that these type of things could easily be, part of it would be relieving that by just trusting in yourself and also saying, I'm okay with this. So my input around that one.
All right. I'm just going to throw something out really quick on that. And it's, I kind of heard something from you, Guillaume. It was like, some people have it, and I'd like to meet those people.
They're out there.
Maybe some people are overconfident.
Yes.
I would just like to, because I tell you, every fight I go into, it's falling back on the foundation I have built and spent a lot of time and effort at practice building. And that's what I fall back onto. And I think that's the thing I focus students on, is that what you do at practice is build that foundation. The higher that foundation is, the better you are in your sport. And really what we're trying to do is just continue making that higher and higher, so that you can compete. You're essentially competing against yourself all the time and not other people. The hard part we see in SCA, and this, Tristan brought this up, and that is, we have real one-on-one competition. I'm going to tell you you got a lot of MMA guys out there, and I'm sure there's other sports that get as much, or a lot of fighting in, but when you look at a lot of boxers, 300-400 fights, and the amateur is a really big career, right? Lomo has like 400 fights, and and you get maybe 50, Canelo's 60 some now in a lifetime in pro boxing. And so you really look at that, they're not competing all that often. I mean, think about, you go to an event, how many fights you get. So we do a lot of competing, and just be aware that you're really, the thing you should be focusing on is, where your foundational level is. And hey, do I feel like I did through that blow better? Do I feel like I compete? Yeah, I don't mind even. I competed with this person better than before. I blocked that shot. My defense is better. Those are the kinds of things that in the long run won't burn you down, but build you up. All right, Helga, you want anything to kind of wrap this one up?
Sure. I'm actually going to tie it back into the nightly virtue of faith, amusingly enough. So we've talked about like some of like the harder training things. Is sometimes in all of this, you have to remember that imposter syndrome is beaten by embodying the faith that you have in your friends. And most people do not practice faith in a very period sense. We're not looking to God or anything else like that to like create a foundation. We create that community that's already been talked about here, and how we beat the imposter syndrome. And so what I'd say is actually take this back to like that little bit of like the modern medieval, and understand the imposter syndrome is beaten with the nightly virtue of faith. Is when I don't trust myself, I trust Branos to say, you didn't suck today. Like, let's reframe this. How are we going to reframe this? I'll go lean on him, or I'll lean on Thorfinn. Ask Thorfinn just how many times I've walked out there and been like, man, I just got my ass kicked. And he's like, Araya, you lost 1 out of 10 fights. 1. That's the only one you can remember. We need it. Here's a beer. Calm down. And so that's one of the things, is like, all this is really good, but like, just lean into your friends and actually trust it. Because I guarantee any voice that was taught to you that imposter syndrome, I said this last episode, no kid has an imposter syndrome. We are nothing but learning little sponges, and we are taught those voices. There's somebody else's voice in your head. So beat that out with the people that you trust in your universe. There you go. To have
all
like
right.
the existential.
No, I love it. And I love that you tied the virtue to it. So, and I think that's really important. We all like to rip ourselves down a little bit sometimes. And some like to build themselves up, but that's another issue to deal with itself, because that comes crashing down pretty hard sometimes. So, but let's move on to the next question while we have them going. What are some of the favorite winning conditions you have used to help yourself or a student through a plateau? So I think this one's a kind of a good one. Tristan, you want to jump in on this one? I'm going to throw you under the bus just because we just did a plateau. We just did a plateau episode,
right? This discussion about failure and then reestablishing victory conditions really stimulated my imagination and memory of how many times and specifics of how to get somebody kind of past a hump. And I remember in one case, I had somebody who they felt like they always had to throw the first shot, and they needed to end their fight in 5 seconds. I was like, okay, well, maybe we need to challenge on patience. Maybe we need to back off the aggression a little bit, because they were basically being careless. And yes, it's a school of thought that, you throw a lot of shots and that percentage rate will result in kills until you get into a good technician who can survive your onslaught and usually
Right.
pick you apart because you're presenting all these opportunities to them. So, you know, the idea of saying, all right, you need to fight, maybe you have to go five, they have to throw 5 blows at you before you can initiate your offense every single bout, or something of that nature, where, you know, now you want to train somebody in, okay, what if this is an endurance fight? What if you need to stretch this fight out and for 5 minutes, and your goal is not to go kill somebody in 30 seconds, but you want to survive and be smart. And that might be, you might be fighting in 100-degree weather and 80% humidity, and you don't have the gas to go guns on for 30 seconds straight because maybe this is the 5th or 6th round in the tournament and you're exhausted. Now you got to fight, you know, more calmly, save your energy or get it back so that you can, you know, you can keep fighting later into a tournament. So, you know, we would do things like, all right, patient, do not throw the first shot. Don't throw in the first 3 or 5. And, you know, usually the start out is a little rough because they forget. They'll do it the first pass and then they'll slip and they'll get 3 and then bang. Okay, now it's my no. More patience. And sometimes those are the lessons that you need to drive in, you know, to a student or to a fighter who's struggling with, I just feel like I got to be aggressive. So that was one memory that I recall having with actually a couple different people, because it's very easy just to say, I need this fight over now. And they just kind of go crazy.
Well, and I would agree. I think that's a common problem across the society in general, but, and that's a whole nother discussion, but
sure.
Who else has something on that one? That was a good example though. Go on.
So I've got
really
two different ways of looking at this. One is what I do for myself for trying to set those winning conditions, and what I do for my squire, and they're different for different reasons. So for myself, what I try to do is take a look at what happened in the previous fight and what I need to work on, and this is within the context of practice. And I have a journal, and I sit down, I write in the journal how the fight went, what went well, what didn't, and then identify from that what I want to work on next. So I try to make sure that I'm focusing on that and trying to execute that in the next fight. And so I write down afterwards, did I do that or not? And how did that go? And then adjust as I go. And so that journal helps me get everything out of my brain, get it down on paper, set a focus of what I'm going to do next. And then I can go on to the next fight and not be dwelling on the last fight and what happened, good or ill. I'm able to focus on what is the thing I'm trying to execute, go out and try and execute that. For my squire, I try to get right now, I'm trying to get him to focus on fundamentals and one piece of the fundamentals. And so I'll be observing his fighting at practice, and I'll go up and talk to him and say, this is what I'm observing, and I want you to try and work on this and narrow down that focus. So he's just trying to do that one thing. And nothing brings me more joy than seeing the smile on his face as it clicks and he gets it and it's working. And then that's when I know, okay, let it roll with that a little bit, and then we go to the next piece. And so building up those fundamentals piece by piece and just narrowing that focus. And so right now, what I have him working on is probing and applying tension and seeing how his opponent reacts, not just going out there and swinging for an opening, but trying to create the opening. And so trying to threaten a little bit, not having to throw a shot to be able to create that threat, but threaten through body motion, sword motion, and be able to read that reaction of what is the opponent doing, what are they telling me, and then to be able to build up that progression of, if I threaten here, they move to block that slot, which opens that slot here, so I can threaten that and throw that shot. And so it's really, it's like I said, so much joy to see it working for him and it clicking and him really getting into that, and the joy it has brought to his fighting to be able to have success in those small steps. And so the next thing that we're probably going to be working on is to use motion to be able to change those angles and increase the pressure that he's being able to create, and how to create pressure in better ways. And the other thing that I want to have him work on is throwing smart shots and being safe when he's throwing shots, not throwing the shot because the opportunity is there, making sure that you're not going to be hit when you're throwing that shot. And so these are the type of things I'm looking at. It's all like Bronis was saying in the last question, focusing on the fundamentals and executing the fundamentals. And as you're executing those fundamentals, the fight will come together and the success will follow if you're executing those fundamentals. It's not going to work every time, but it's going to work more often than it doesn't.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead, Helga.
So just kind of going at this question, like super directly of like, what's some of my favorite winning conditions versus like, how do we make them? Is some of my favorite ones is, can I ID my own pattern sets? And can I verbalize them? Can I verbalize them to myself and my students? Because if I can verbalize them, I can see them, and then they can see them, so they can call me on it. So that's like a winning condition that we run almost every practice. Almost all of us have that slot. Is like, can we see where our patterns are? What is something that's so rote that we're just doing it? So, and that's that pre-programming the fight. So we're teaching each other how to ID that pre-programmed fight. The second one is where's my feet? Like almost always and constantly, I'm asking me and again my students, where are my feet? And then from there you can break it down. Why? What's going wrong? Like what was successful? So you can use that as a base foundation for a winning condition of like understanding where your feet are, and then you can refine that. So like if you're having a good day, cool. My winning condition is like making sure my lateral motion is real crisp and it's at the perfect measure and everything else like that. I'm having a really bad day. I can be like, maybe I shouldn't walk into a fight like I've got 2 peg legs. And so it's a really good adjustment, like winning condition that you can then use and reassess very quickly in practice. And the third one's is like, it's always mechanics based. It's always mechanics based. So I'm always working on a fundamental. Am I returning my shots correctly? Is my elbow in good form? Is my hand behind my elbow when I'm throwing? So I'm still preserving this joint. And so like really, really simple, but like you can grind on those. And so it doesn't matter if you're a brand new fighter to like break a plateau, because I guarantee a brand new fighter is going to be a hot mess mechanically, or a very upper end fighter, because now you're going to be doing like the fine tuning and trying to take that extra 0.25 seconds off your like flat snap. And that turns into a big fundamental, like I'm going to undo this puzzle and have to walk back down the mountain sometimes. And so I try to choose very broad winning conditions that then can be refined really quickly every time in practice based on headspace, where I'm at physically, and like what the day is about, like who's at practice.
Thorfinn, you have anything?
A little bit. So we're talking about how to get over that plateau, right? And I think that perseverance is actually a very important element of this, and trusting yourself, because what's happening is, I talked about this actually in the video review episode we just did. Most people, as they learn new techniques or are improving, things don't gel very well, and it feels awkward, cumbersome, and even things that you used to kind of rely on become hard to do. And it's very frustrating. And what I'm saying is persevere through this part, because what's happening is your body's adjusting to the new technique and the new kind of format of how your fight is going forward. And then what's going to happen is, as the chaff goes away, you're going to lock in your gears into the new techniques that you've learned, and the old, I'm not saying bad, but just the other techniques that you've shed are now going to be like easy, and suddenly you'll have this almost like feeling, like release, like that, as your fight has then jumped to a point where now it's different than it was before, right? And this is what we talk about plateauing or leveling, right? And so you're getting over that plateau to a new plateau, and you're going to be there for a bit until you figure out the next thing you got to improve, right? But I think that just having this, it's okay to just get through this part. It's going to suck, and just that's part of what we're doing. And until you get past that, it's going to be awkward, and it's going to feel like don't fall back on those favorite old bad habits, right? Instead, you've worked so hard to move forward. Don't get stuck kind of being lazy and going, well, they used to work. Instead, trust in the fact that it's going to work. And so,
yep, I can't agree more, brother. Can't agree more. Right. I think the key is everybody has to understand plateaus are, and I think that's sometimes even the name is wrong here, is there are times when you have to integrate that style, and it takes a little time to do that. And that time is the time that you're actually, your body is putting things in sync and building that correct time to actually throw the shot or do whatever new thing you're doing. Because when it's new, you're building it back in. And I think that's a very important time. Plateaus are a great place to really kind of grind out the new things you learn.
Correct.
That will become your new base. And I think the key point that Thorfinn touched on here is don't fall back. And I see this way too much. by the way, this is I've said it a million times. Rather have a consistent 20-80 fighter, 20% win, 80% loss, than an inconsistent 80-20 fighter, because that 20-80 fighter is ready to learn their whole career, and they learn how to learn their whole career because they have to. And they're 30-70, then they're 40-60, and they just keep building because they learn how to put the pieces together. Where what happens with somebody that gets a lot of wins in the beginning, they really want to fall back to those wins.
Of course, comfortable
earlier in the development because they want those wins, right? They don't want to fall back, and that's actually sometimes the hardest place for folks. So if you're one of those people that are like, hey, I'm a 20-80 fighter, well, good for you. You're going to learn really how to learn, and hopefully you have a good coach around you. Hopefully you're watching these kinds of things. For you 80-20 guys out there, I would suggest that you go fight some top guys and let them show you really if you're 80-20 or not, because they will probably show you you're not. And that's the key, is that you sometimes need that place where it's like, whoo, maybe I do need to learn, and maybe I do need to work, because I'm 80-20 against a random amount of people. Random is hard to fix. So just beware. And for those people that feel like they're kind of sitting and grinding, sometimes that's the way people get to, gold medals. So, all right. Helga.
Also, if you're sitting on a plateau, check to see if you're talking to yourself in a fixed mindset.
Yeah.
That like, I should, I can't, anything else like that, or I have to, is all that language, especially when you're talking to yourself about like how you're setting goals and conditions and everything else like that, is if you're trying to force your fight, of course you're stuck in a plateau, because you're not playing. You're not trying new concepts. You're not allowing yourself to fail. Like, you don't need to be perfect to get out of a plateau. You actually need to do the reverse. You need to fail a lot to get out of a plateau.
One thing on plateaus that helped me a lot was realizing that, at least in my case, when I hit a plateau, it was because I believed something was true when it wasn't. That I had worked out, how I wanted to do something, and it was either inefficient, it was not correct, the form was wrong, there was something amiss, and I didn't catch it. And once I went through and found what the problem was, where I was mistaken, that's when the plateau, when I said, okay, this is what I need to change. And then once I did, then I was able to progress. But I've seen people really struggle with, no, I'm right. I know what I'm doing is right. And they can't let go. And the longer they hold on to that mistaken belief, the longer they are stuck at that plateau, and until either somebody can pound it through their head, or they just finally have it out with their ego and say, well, maybe I am mistaken, and maybe I was not right in the first place. And then they can progress past it.
I think a lot of I call those people yeah buts, because they're going to tell you yeah but, and then you're going to be like,
really, yeah, but it works at my local practice. Yeah, but we've all heard of it a million times, I'm sure.
Yeah, but
I've actually wanted to like teach with a squirt bottle like next week.
Yeah. Oh shoot, I'm going to add that to my practice, squirt bottle. It's gonna be awesome. Okay.
Well, should we roll on to the next one, or we want to talk about plateaus more?
Yeah, we got quite a few questions. We can keep rolling, I think.
Sorry,
you're muted, boss.
Real quick, Helga, can you? I just one last piece on this one I'd want to talk about, and that is that play is key in destroying plateaus, because you touch base here on the comment you made, and it's not made enough. And I'd just like you to go ahead and touch base on that.
Oh, all right. Sorry, it was like an offhanded comment on that one. So the brain doesn't work. So this is the reason why a lot of practices have gone over to bringing padded swords, bringing wiffle ball bats, and reducing the idea of pain. Our sport is based around pain, right? We are literally a telling blow. And in practice, like especially with our newer fighters that are stuck at a plateau, a lot of the time they're either avoiding their ego or they're avoiding a pain response. So they've stopped playing with an idea. This is the reason why King of Practice is super fucking dangerous, by the way. Especially if you have a knight being King of Practice, you will watch all the lower end fighters stagnate because they can't play with a concept. They can't play with a different approach. They can't play with a different shield type because they literally get physically punished. And so that's fight or flight. Is if you're in a practice that's stagnating, everybody's in fight or flight mode. To get back into play mode, you have to like shoot for that 60 to 80% effective ratio for your goals and get everybody into the idea of let's go play with a concept. And so by removing part of that like pain response, like with wall bats, padded sticks, slow work, anything else like that, you actually get the brain to come out of fight or flight mode. You'll watch people start breathing all the way down to their diaphragm because you can't do that in fight or flight mode, by the way. Weird neuro thing. But getting people back into the play mode allows us to access so much more of our brain and to process all the data coming in versus just processing, avoiding the punishment. And so getting back into a play mode, especially when you're in a plateau, is huge. Old school terms on this, we actually see like people taking away a success point. So changing your weapons, not throwing a specific shot, like changing up who you're fighting regularly on practice, going to a different practice. This is all ways to force your brain back into a learning mode. There's just better cheat codes now. Go get a padded stick, like, and actually ask the questions and play. Get your brain re-engaged. Get your logic brain, which is much, much slower than your lizard brain, by the way. It's like 1/6 as fast, by the way, like in response time neurologically, is get your brain back into that. But you have to give it enough safety to get there to start playing again. So there.
Thank you very much. I really wanted to hear that because a lot of sports are getting to that. And I'll tell you, one of the key sports getting to that right now is MMA. They roll all the time. And Tristan, you're the one that kind of pointed to an article that I burned through about how a lot of other places look how we do MMA here and burn out, in the past compared to European styles, which just roll. So they'll roll for hours and, we'll go to 2 practices a week. And so the overall amount of time
the Russians were the big pioneers in that one.
Yep. Yeah. It's good stuff. And they do it in boxing too. So it's the same kind of gig. Yep. So, all right.
Can I say how important,
how much time
can I say how important I think golf tube type stuff like this really is? Like that ability to be able to not get hurt is something that I wish we had figured out 30 fucking years ago. Because you can't practice an offside, rib blow more than one time, right? But with these new kind of like people trusting a boffer weapon or a golf tube or whatever allows. I did a thing just the other day where I let someone do, I think it was 18 or 20 in a row offside bodies, so they can learn that body mechanic, right? Which we never got to do except in the most perfect situation. Now we can just do it over and over until they can learn it. I wish we would have figured that out a long time ago. So everyone out there, take this advice. Go and get that type of stuff. Add that to your practice. It's going to stretch your physicality longer. You're not dealing with injuries, and also allow quicker, like a ramped ability to learn muscle memory. So, sorry, I just love that part.
No, I know you're passionate about it. All right. I'm having a hard time with this next one because I have a hard time believing somebody would say this, but I'm sure they do, or otherwise people wouldn't ask the question. How do I get over someone commenting along the lines of "You're never going to be any good," or "You're just average"? And so, I mean, I don't want to answer that one right away, only because I'm a little passionate on that one. And this is a case too, is not everybody wins a gold medal, but you should still be very proud of the way and effort you put into something. So, yes, there is this, in the Olympics, there is this gold medal expectation. Not everybody hits it, but you know what? Should be a lot of proud Olympians. I've never made it to the Olympics, so we should be basing, and nobody should be taking that away from somebody. We should be basing our own growth on, a reasonable expectation, and then monitoring how you're doing through that and be proud of yourself. And that could be just getting to practice and working hard. So anyways, go ahead. Who would like this one? Because it's a terrible one.
Do I get all my
take a shot
F-bomb
at it.
for this one?
Yeah, you can
Probably.
use every F-bomb you have.
Cool.
I got a couple too.
There's a note in here that says, how do you do this besides through spite? Well, my first response is, well, shit in their shoes, because they're just assholes anyways. So I am 5'5" in this sport. I have a completely reconstructed right arm. I've broken my back, and I have a TBI. Like, let's start there. And I was reminded of this, that I chose to be broken instead of fixed while I was an unbelt. I got a lot of these comments. I got this, like, we'll never vote for you because you chose to be broken. I got the, you're not tall enough for this sport. I got, you'll never be strong enough for this sport. And I would like to note, I am a spite-driven creature. Absolutely. Like, that is my founding virtue, or sin, or both.
This is I can confirm.
So how do you get over somebody's comments like this? This was a long road, and if I could give you the shortcut in a simple sentence, I hope it sticks. You cannot take on their insecurities and make it your damage. Because that's all this comment is. They're applying their biases and their insecurities in a damaging and verbal way. And if anybody says this to anybody out there, you come find me, and I will go have a conversation with that individual about their insecurities and how they are making this sport lesser because they are taking away somebody else's joy. Don't take on their damage. It's not yours to carry. It doesn't belong with you. And give that gift right back to them. And be rude about it if you need to, and ask them, why are you feeling insecure about me being on the field? And that's the politest way ever to tell them to get fucked.
That
It is some
I-
awful gatekeepery bullshit. It's what it really is. And it's these people, like you said, their insecurities, they're trying to transfer onto other people so they can feel more important and valued. As if other people's achieving things somehow devalues your experience. I hate this idea. And so for me, when if I see someone like that, or I will walk over and, like Helga said, I will go and talk to him right now. Right. That to me is just the most awful thing you can do to someone. Here's the thing. Are we all going to win crown? No, but that's not what we're talking about. We're all talking about enjoying our experience, exploring, combat and chivalric deeds, right? That's what we're doing. If every single fighter has this option, has this ability, to do that. And I don't think that, how dare someone say that to someone? Those people suck. It's not you, it's them. Remember that. Whoever sent this in, it's not you, it's them.
So I want to go a slightly different direction. I agree with both of you on this, in that it's wholly inappropriate for someone to say that. But just for a moment, what if they're right? What if you're never going to be good? What if you're just going to be average? If you're passionate about it and you're doing the best that you can, that doesn't matter.
Right.
Yeah.
I've been playing
Right.
guitar for 30 years. I'm a lousy guitar player. But I am better today. I am better today than I've ever been. And I'm continuing to work to improve. And I'm continuing to learn new things and apply new things. I still think I'm not very good, but that's okay. I'm still the best I've ever been at it. And I'm still working to improve.
Are you going to be in Van Halen?
No.
Okay. But you're still having fun and exploring, creating art.
But I pick
Excellent.
up my guitar and play every day because I enjoy it. And the fact that I'm not very good at it doesn't matter.
There's the key. There is the key. I mean, we put ourselves in this place to expand and really push ourselves. Look at what you're trying to push, and look at the success rate that you're doing, and how you're learning and how you're moving forward. You know, I got bad news. There is no greatest person in the SCA. So you can just wipe that one straight out. Right. So, you know, my piece there is if like Guillaume says, if you're better today or next month, then you're winning. So, Tristan, you want to cover, or are we covered much or enough already?
Yeah, I covered a lot of it. You know, I totally agree in that when somebody dumps on you, they are projecting their garbage. And really, you know, we all have enough problems criticizing ourselves. We don't need, you know, that side of the back of our brain that says, hey, you know, you get better. You need to step it up a little bit. We don't need to give them an ally, especially one that's going to, you know, diminish you. And so what I've noticed too, just in looking into the psychology side of things, the people that do that tend to be narcissists. They tend to be very psychologically damaged people, and they more often than not just spread toxicity everywhere. And so there comes a time when you just need to prune your you know, be careful of who you consider your tribe. Listen to the people you trust and just disregard the people that you don't, and don't even hang out with them. It's because they just spread. It just spreads like a plague. And the last thing you want is to, you know, have those nagging thoughts. And I just heard this the other day, or even today, I think. And they said, if you go to a child, like a 4-year-old, they won't have any thoughts like this. Oh, I'm not any good. They just have that love of learning, that passion. They're curious. They're just on fire. Whenever they grow up and they start getting those voices, they got them from somebody else. They got them from a narcissist. They got them from a toxic person. And because they absorbed it, like kids are just, as you said, they're little absorption sponges. They absorb that toxic language, and it nested in their brain, and it's still there. And some people are fighting, you know, a lot of people are fighting to get those voices out, because they say, this is not healthy for me. And so consider it that way. Like it's a poison that you are being offered. Just don't drink it.
All right. So, yep. Go ahead, Helga.
I have a follow-up for that. What would you guys do if you unconsciously drank it? So, like, you're talking about that child thing. Like, all of us have struggled with this at any point in time. So, like, building on this question is, what are some of the ways that you guys have gotten over some of the things that people told you?
Good question.
For me, it's always easy, actually. I'm going to take this one real quick. Yeah. I love it because it only pushes, and this is not everybody. For me, I was once told I would never win crown by a Duke. And you know what? I look back and he was right. I didn't take it serious enough. And that comment made me very serious. I won a crown, and then I proceeded to beat the hell out of him in a number of tournaments. And
how'd that work out? So right? I mean,
yeah, it worked out well for me. So I thanked him, and we moved on. But
that was also you have to admit that was a false statement, though.
Right? Well, no, I mean, in some ways he was right. What was happening, in my view, was and this is going to be a terrible thing, and it's probably another episode to talk about. I was having so much fun fighting in the SCA that my focus wasn't pure.
Yeah, Thorfinn, I would say it was an incomplete statement more than a false statement.
Correct. There you go.
Where Bronis was at the time, if he didn't change anything, it was true. But because he took that and changed, it made it not true anymore.
Yeah. So, you know, I guess Helga,
maybe for other if they had said you couldn't win crown.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Never say never. I mean, that whole never piece. I mean, somebody says never, I'm like, okay, I'll move on because you're not listening. You know, there are a lot of people that were like, you will never walk again. And they're runners now, right? And so that the whole never say never, be careful on that one. Everybody, no matter how you're feeling, you'd be surprised what effort will take you. So Helga, did mine was the kind of the macho example of this. So it really, to me, it doesn't count in a lot of ways. It's just my personal ego and the way my brain works. But that's not the way everybody's brain works.
I'd actually say that I'm going to use a personal example. I learned a lot more self-kindness.
Mm-hmm.
to beat what that gift, that poison, and everything else like that, I had to learn how to be kind to myself again. You know, I grew up as one of those like gifted and talented kids. You never are allowed to fail. Like success equals love. That's a dangerous one. And so when this got told me in fighting, all of a sudden I was no longer like, I never even had the potential to be successful. And as a kid, I was never taught to be kind to myself. Very self-driven. Like if you fucked up, you got your ass kicked. And so I had to learn how to be kind to myself in a way that I would actually want to be kind to, like when I'm training my dog or my horse, everything else like that. Kicking their ass in the midst of a training session isn't going to get you anywhere. It's going to teach the animal how to be afraid of you. Versus like if I treated myself the same way I treated like my dog while you're teaching him how to sit, you don't get violent with them. You try a different method. You ask them in a different way. You slow things down. You go back to a point of success. And I found by applying that with all the poison that I swallowed as a kid on the fighting field, everything else like that, all of a sudden I learned that like when people would come at me with that stuff, I'd be like, I'm still here and still showing up. And that's cooler than like everybody else that fucked off. Like I'm part of the field. And it also helped me redefine what a fighter was, because I took a real toxic pill about what a fighter was in the beginning of this, of like, I had to blend in with the boys. I had to make sure that I presented masculine, because if I wore eyeliner, then I was just being a girl on the field and stuff like that. And so by learning self-kindness, I also learned to embody exactly who I am on the field at that moment in time. And all that noise fell away because it became somebody else's. So.
Nope. I like it. Absolutely like it. All right, we're gonna burn through the next one, and I actually skipped one.
Actually, can I just add one more, because I've got a slightly different mindset.
Okay,
and that is,
go ahead.
and like you said, you're right. Everybody's got like a different way of handling this. And for me, it was always, is there something useful I can get out of the statement they just made?
Ooh, yeah.
And sometimes there's a shade of truth that they say, well, maybe this is something I have not looked at, and I can use it. If there is nothing, it's pretty much like somebody just told me they can make an internal combustion engine out of pasta. Oh, that's fine. Great. Whatever. And it's just dismiss it because they just don't know what they're talking about. And you don't want to fill your mind with useless nonsense. But sometimes within those criticisms, there can be a little morsel of something useful that can either motivate you or get you to think in a different way. And you can use that for growth.
Yep, and that falls right into exactly how I applied mine. So
right.
All right, one I missed. I kind of jumped over this one, and it's terrible because it's actually from my Grand Squire here. How do you deal with fear? Fear often comes in a way of what we want to achieve. Fear comes from losing, not from being not being accepted, not performing well, missing shots. There's a lot of things to fear, and I could keep going on. Not living up to expectations. These are all layers of field. And by the way, this comes from an active prince in the known world. So, just be aware that fear comes in so many different ways at so many different levels. But fear is fear. I mean, so it is something we all have to deal with. And his question is, how are we dealing with that? So,
I think you hit on it with a lot of anxiety, which is fear-based, comes from having a high expectation that you doubt you can achieve. And either that's because you set your expectation extraordinarily high, or you allowed other people to project their expectations on you and you accepted them. You drank their poison. And now you're nervous because you don't want to let them down or feel like you are, falling short of their expectations. And of course, we see that with royal tournaments all over the place. People get much more nervous fighting in a royal tournament generally than they do in a little shire tournament that they would visit in their backyard or something of that nature. That pressure part. And so I guess identifying what is the source of the fear, I guess, would be a good beginning, good start. Is that fear their own self-doubt? Is it a self-imposed expectation that is unreasonable? Maybe it's helping them find reasonable expectations or setting goals that are not so far above their ability that they get depressed when they don't get them, or they start beating themselves up when they don't achieve those. and making them, challenging enough that it motivates them, but not so much that it demoralizes them if they don't achieve them.
Yeah, I think there's so many places. I mean, there's the fear of even getting into armor sometimes, right? I mean, I have seen people, and this is the reason why we use boffers a lot. I don't put them in armor right away. In fact, I let them hit me first with boffers, allow that energy to come out of them. And then when we get into it, and this depends on the individual that shows up to practice, we will work boffers for a while until it's like, okay, maybe it's time to work rattan. Right. And we work through those fear levels. Right. And this comes right back to what Helga said about, and actually Thorfinn actually really dove into, and that is about play. You bring a layer of safety into the game where it's just playing, and people are more than willing to do it. And I think that becomes a big part of eliminating fear early off. The more we eliminate fear early off, the easier it is to continue to grow. Really, expectation becomes a harder place later. You expect to perform a certain way. I will tell you that it's not usually crown that I see as much fear in as post crown, i.e., I have seen a number of kings step off the throne and find the fights that they're supposed to win and not the ones that they should be fighting, right? And what I mean by that is they spent a year hearing people tell them, you're the best. You're supposed to be winning fights. You're the king, and they get a little bit of this fixed mentality mindset, and then
high expectation,
high expectation, and then they'll fight a couple of people, and then the next thing you know, they're fighting. They start getting hit more than they like, and they start moving down the stack until they're ready to learn again. They're ready for that growth mentality again because they want to get back to where they were. So just be where fear is part of the game. There's a lot of other things besides, there's inside fear. Mike Tyson was fear-based, which is amazing, but that's why he was the way he was. There's also freezing, which is a whole different animal in sports. And that's something we'll probably talk about in another episode. Thorfinn.
Yeah, so the hard thing here is we all go into every fight wanting to win the fight, right? That's part of the whole deal. And especially when you're trying to establish your renown, you're trying to win every fight. And I will tell you, the most important thing you can possibly do is stop caring about winning. And it seems counterintuitive to what we're talking about. The idea of winning a tournament is caring about winning, right? But it's not actually. Is that I feel that I've seen so many fighters carry an extra burden that is this weight of fear of if I lose this round, then my career is affected this way, or how am I going to win the tournament? Instead, if you can just shed the concept of, because here's the thing, only one person is going to win each fight, right? That's a guarantee. So stop worrying about it. If you can put that down, and your opponent is more than likely over there worrying about it, right? And so if we could just have them carry that weight for you, it allows you then to be free to create in the moment. If you have built on your fundamental skills and all the things we were talking about earlier, to be in the moment in the fight, so you don't have that baggage. You're not dragging extra weight behind you, and you're just free to create. And it's super hard. It's not honestly, it's not achievable all the time. It's a thing we must work at, is to be not afraid to quit caring about winning. And even great champions, you'll find, have this thing that they could do, this ability to say, I don't know, we're gonna figure it out. Just lay it out there and figure it out. And so if you can stop caring about winning, this fear will go away, because that's the thing, is you're afraid of stuff. You're afraid of losing, you're afraid of the effect on your chances of getting knighted and all those things. Stop and just let your opponent carry that weight for you.
All right,
I just have a super quick thing on Thorfinn. I talked about this last episode. Is Thorfinn talks about putting down the weight of winning. Just think of winning as accidental. It's an accidental byproduct to everything else that you're doing there that day, even in tournament. Winning is an accidental byproduct of them stepping onto your field. At practice, winning is an accidental byproduct of your victory condition. And so that allows you to let go of that weight, because now you're not attached to the outcome of what happens. You shouldn't be surprised when they fall over, but you shouldn't be like, yeah, I planned that. That's one really easy way to set it just down. So I just wanted to jump on that.
Very well said.
So I wanted to jump in with one last thing on this one, and this comes from a parallel field, which is self-defense training. Obviously, one of the things of being attacked is terrifying. Real violence can be absolutely not only ugly but scary, and the fear of that, the way to defeat that is familiarity. When you do, whether they call it in martial arts stress inoculation training, sometimes they call it pressure testing, where you actually try to simulate as close as possible. You train gradually to get up to the point where you can handle seeing somebody with seething rage coming after you with full intent. When you're familiar with it, you don't get as activated, and you don't have that same high risk of freezing and panicking or hesitating or failing to perform. Now, because the SCA fighting is a sport, we deal with a kind of a lower level of fear. It's not a fear for your life or fear somebody's going to kill you or injure you. It's a little different. But the idea that familiarity, having your training build into the higher levels of that stress, just so that this is not a stranger. You're not running across something that you've not seen before. And same thing would be why people are encouraged, fighters as they progress are encouraged to go fight in higher stakes tournament, royal tournaments, higher caliber tournaments, because that is the SCA's version of stress inoculation. You are under your pressure, and the big challenge there is not learning the physical. It's learning the mental discipline to not let that stress run you off the rails, and to handle what it's like to compete in a way that works for you. And not everybody works the same way with it, but you have to learn to be in that environment and still perform.
All right. So I want to post up question number 16, Guillaume, if you can go ahead and do that.
Yep.
Only because it falls right into this same line. I think we covered a lot of it already. And that is, I wanted to ask about fear of winning and that, and how that can lead to failure to performance in practice or in tournaments. Right. And I think we covered a lot of that. And not only that failure of, the fear of winning, of really it comes down to failing in a tournament, but also I think Tristan, you covered the idea here is put yourself in places where this becomes common and it becomes easier. It never goes away. I still, I go look for fights I'm probably going to lose. Right. And only because I know I have to get better at them. If I was afraid of, losing, then I wouldn't go do that anymore. So by putting yourself in those places, you start getting used to it. You will never be used to it. You'll always get nerves. There's a way to work nerves off. Lots of boxing, they work nerves off by working pads in the back and get a little sweat on them, stuff like that. You can do the exact same things in the SCA. I think we actually missed that too much in the SCA. We should do that a bit more. So, but really, go ahead.
All right. So this concept actually falls into like the same concept of in racehorse training. A lot of the times we have a horse that loses. So you teach the one to win, you teach one to lose. And this concept kind of falls into this with me. And this also talks about taking on that emotional burden. When people tell you that, you're just going to be average or everything else like that, you will start taking on that box and functioning within it. Please ask me how I know, because I am a choke artist. And one of the things I was doing was setting myself up for failure to constantly be that second racehorse. And always being like, I'm cool being number 2, because number 2 doesn't get the job, doesn't do this, everything else like that, no responsibilities. But also what it was doing was making me change my victory conditions too fast before I finished that last 10% of learning. It was taking off that last 5% of my fight where that killer showed up and got the job done. And so this is something to actually watch out for in your students of like, this accidentally happened in a practice. I was in one of the deepest practices in the known world where it was 7 Dukes and me, little itty bitty unbelt. I would like to note my success rate was 0 for a year. But it meant that like I wouldn't fought, and like Kvek and I are standing there, and he's like, "You should be smoking all these people," and I'm like, "I haven't want to fight in a while." And he's like, "We are going to so many other practices to fix it." And it was just I was never allowing myself to do that. I was constantly getting in my own way, and what it had developed is a fear of winning because I had gotten so used to losing, and I was comfortable in that. And anytime I would hit somebody, I would talk them right out of it. It couldn't have been good. My mechanics were off. Everything else like that. This is a fear of I made myself a box and I stuck myself in it. And then anytime I started getting out of that, I would, again, like change my gear, change my shield, change the length of my sword, change what I was working on because I was comfortable in failure. I wasn't comfortable also with the social pressure of starting to get good. And this is something that we all need to pay attention to in our unbelts as they are starting to get vetted for knighthood. And a lot of our minority communities is that we as knights and coaches want to be helpful. And so as soon as they start getting good, all of us are walking up and being like, so, hey, about this next thing you could work on. That actually puts a shit ton of pressure on people to keep losing if they're not ready to start having those conversations. Because then, like, you didn't pay attention to me 5 months ago. Why are you here now? And so we have to, as coaches, we got to watch for that too and be like, hey, I feel like you're being successful in this. Do you want any coaching? Like, do you want time to talk? I'm here if you need it. And let them come to you because you'll find that they will get out of the box much faster.
You know, there's an interesting parallel in the animal world when they have studied all the way from, puppies and dogs, bears, mice, even when the adults will play with the young to teach them how to wrestle and how to fight, which is basically what they're doing. It looks like they're playing, they're learning how to fight, but they're doing it in play. If the adult does not let the young one win at least about 60 to 80% of the time and just dominates them the whole time, the young one will just quit. They'll just get demoralized and say, fuck it. And I'm going to stop. So which means in the animal world, if their fighting meant that it was their own survival or their ability to hunt, they would not be able to do it. And that cub or the young would basically squander and die. So what I would say is we can learn from this to say, what is an effective learning method for somebody who is far less and far more inexperienced than the mentor that's working with them. If that person is starting to do things that are correct and it always fails, their brain is just going to go, well, that didn't work. I guess I got to try something else. They'll speed over good technique and good form, thinking it didn't work. So now what am I going to do? And they'll just wander around lost. And and I'll say, Helga, you are probably 1 in 1,000 who did not quit, and you kept going through such a demoralizing environment. But because the other 999 would probably just say, screw this.
I would also like to know that they were like super positive, be like, oh man, you caught that block this time. And I'd be like,
well, I mean, the positive reinforcement afterwards doesn't do anything when you say, I'm going to try something and you execute it well and it fails because you are so outclassed in terms of skill. Now, I get that on the other, and I've been the person on the other side of that too, where, okay, now I got to shut off, a big portion of my defense and start fighting down to somebody. Well, frankly, there's a time to do it. And the adult wolf will do that with the cub.
This is another opportunity. This is another opportunity where play can come in and that
exactly
switching to foam weapons or switching to wiffle bats or whatever else gives that opportunity for that person to have success and the more experienced fighter not to be punished for giving opportunities for the less experienced fighter to have success when they're executing proper technique.
Correct.
So, this is an issue that I deal with a lot, and for me, I don't know that fear is the right word for it. For me, I feel a lot of it is one of the questions that we haven't covered yet was around past trauma and dealing with past trauma and how it can affect things. And for me, it's a lot of looking back at growing up and being picked on and bullied and in school, and then coming into this and finding myself worthy of winning, allowing myself to find victory is a challenge. And so I have no fear of failure. I understand failure is part of the process and dealing with that failure. What did I fail? How can I learn from that? Learning how to allow myself to win is the challenge that I'm facing right now.
Yeah.
Yep. All right, Thorfinn,
And I'm
did you have
curious,
something?
What exactly is the
Yeah,
source
real
of
quick,
the fear
like
of winning?
this.
Is
Hold-
it
hold on.
an
You know-
introvert that doesn't want the attention, or is it a, for me, what my biggest fear of winning was winning in a way that I didn't deserve it. Like if anybody would have said, "Well, Tristan's freaking cheating. That bastard blew off a shot, and he won, but he's a shithead." Like that was my absolute. I'm never
Sure.
going to have that. I would rather lose, with dignity than even have anybody believe that I would cheat to win. Like that
So
was
to a
my
certain
big.
extent, it's like that without the actual justification for it. It's believing that I deserve to win,
Right.
and not deserve to win as in I didn't throw a bad shot or be accused of cheating or anything else like that, but just in the general sense of
Mhm.
I'm out here and I'm competing and I'm as worthy of winning as anybody else is, and getting over that mental hump of getting that out of the way so that I can just execute my fight and be able to finish it off. So
I think you got to get used to winning. This goes right back to what you were talking about with the animal kingdom.
Yep.
So, all right, folks. We got about. Okay, guys. Thorfinn, I'm going to announce something, and then it's your turn. We got about 25 minutes. We have about 10 more questions to get through, so we're going to start burning through them, and we're just going to leave it to 2 or 3 coaches to answer them, and I'll rotate that around. All right, go ahead, Thorfinn. Make it short.
So this whole thing with the tournaments is that we created a thing called the Crapeau. It's a tournament that was held monthly for the last 30 years, and what happened is that you are in a tournament situation all the time. So where other fighters are only doing 1 or 2 tournaments a year, I was doing 12 a year, right? And so that fear of winning and all those things starts to shed away as you move into a situation where you're very comfortable in the tournament kind of model. And so I would say, like, if you want to get away from that, try to take your local group, start a monthly tournament. And this tournament has no particular value except that you won the tournament, right? But what it does is it gives you a very focused situation where you can't get training in tournaments unless you're in tournaments, right? And so, like, fighter practice is great, but in tournament training, you can only get it in these type of situations, the focus and those things that you need. Take this, run with it, and that'll help a lot of shedding the fear of all those things. So anyways.
Awesome.
I would totally agree, man. And thank you both, Helga and Thorfinn, for keeping that running, and especially during COVID, because I had a conversation about that the other day, and it kind of made me feel like the SCA was still going in a time when it was kind of tearing itself apart. So I'm happy, and it's wonderful to see. Sometimes it's only 4 people or lower there, 4 people there, but they're still pounding it out, and they still get their opportunity. So thank you, guys. All right, next question. So when working through a failure, especially a physical one, or one that requires a complete reconstruction of your fighting, do the coaches have any tips on for feeling like you are making progress? In other words, you're going to in this case, you're maybe doing wholesale changes to your style to move forward. The idea is, how do you track your progress? I think you're looking for, in addition to redefining what your victory conditions are. So I think here he's asking, hey, I have big changes, especially physical ones. How can I, how do I look at my progress, and how do I redefine my conditions? Who wants to jump on this one? And we'll move these around a little faster. First person? Anyone? All right. I'll jump. Oh, go ahead, Helga, and then I'll jump in after you.
I was about to say the 2 people with completely rebuilt shoulders that have had to relearn how to fight. The quickest answer I have to this one is letting go of the ego of who you were and understand who you are now. You have to redefine your victory conditions by the body you have today. And this goes far more, this really sets in with athletes that define themselves by their success rates or define themselves by their sport. There's a lot of neurological training around this. It's an identity crisis because we always try to be the best version of what we understand we were not where we are today. So the first place is victory conditions need to be about addressing your own ego and learning your new body. If that's going to PT, if that's relearning how to throw a shot, walk back down the hill. Understand that you've been there once, you can get there again, and it's just a different path. And also go to your goddamn PT.
Yeah, all the time. And I tell you, I've had two Dukes come to me and ask to redefine their fighting. And they were like, hey, and they won a long time ago. And both of them I respected a great deal. We had an episode on this, and I have more respect for somebody that can let go of their ego and say, hey, I want to do it this way and move forward in a true growth mentality. It's amazing. And hang your hat on that. Hang your hat on doing something that's probably harder than learning how to fight, because you have to get past the idea that you already know how to fight. Not only know how to fight, but you were a champion at what you did. I think set those victory conditions in a way that you can monitor those. It's like, all right, my hand is supposed to be here. So first thing is you need to find out, how do I want to fight? Are you working with somebody? Work with them to set some, hey, what's the most important thing? Set some steps and then work through those steps. Like, hey, I want you to start doing, the first step is footwork. So we're going to start doing with more footwork. Next step is lowering your stance. So we're going to start getting lower in your stance. Third step is we're going to hold your hand or shield position differently. Just work through those things and you're going to see progress and be able to recognize that progress, especially if you journal. And you should put all those steps in a journal and start marking off how the things you're working on at each practice and how you feel, how you did with them, or can you do them better, and write those things down. So,
for anybody quick,
anyone else on that one?
I wish I knew now I wish I knew then what I know now. Well, if you're restarting, you now know what you didn't know then, and you can actually use that to do a better job of doing self-analysis, of planning out what you just maybe stumbled through when you were younger. But totally on point with what Helge said. You're doing it in a new body. Imagine a race car driver getting in a whole different car. He may have been great in the car that he won his championship in, but he's got to learn a different machine. And, we all, as we get older, are struggling with that same thing. So that is what it is.
Yep. Or styles change. So it's just the way stuff works.
Absolutely.
All right. This is actually a pretty good one. How do we help explain to our students when injuries happen that it's not the end? That's a hard one to convince somebody who's sitting on the sideline watching everybody else fight. All right. Yeah. Guillaume, I'm going to throw you under the bus because you're sitting here with an injury that has you on the sideline.
Yep. I probably about a month and a half ago now, I sprained a finger on my sword hand, and so I can't swing a sword right now. And not much I can do other than let it rehab it, let it heal, do everything I can to go through the process of healing. But the biggest thing for me is that this isn't the first injury that's taken me away from fighting. I've dislocated both my shoulders at different times in my fighting career. I've had different stretches of dealing with, not at the same time. There are different shoulders at different times. I've dealt with tendonitis in both my elbows at different times. And so I've gone through these ups and downs of dealing with injury. And the biggest thing is, it's a physical sport. We know it's a physical sport. It puts a lot of strain on your body, and we accept that going into it. And depending on the nature of the injury, some are easier to recover from than others. But the best I can recommend is staying engaged. Keep going to practice. Be involved in the SCA, even though you're not able to fight. The SCA is so much broader than just the fighting community. There's so much more to be able to do to stay engaged in the hobby. And then when you're able to recover from the injury, if you're able to recover from the injury, the fighting community will be happy to welcome you back. If you aren't a marshal, you could look at marshaling while you're injured and learning getting authorized as a marshal and participate that way. And that frees up other people to be able to play. And so the biggest advice I can give is to stay engaged. And even though I'm not able to fight right now, I'm still watching all kinds of videos. I'm reading books. I'm working on the mental aspects of the game. I'm doing things I can do to improve my fighting, even though I can't fight right now.
A big one is to take that time and maybe learn to become a coach or a mentor. Go to practice, study people, help them through their issues. You'll learn a ton by studying, watching people fight, and even just answering their questions, trying to get a cohesive, good answer to their basic questions.
All right. Anyone else on that one?
Okay.
Go ahead, Heike.
Teaching them how to process injury. So a lot of times we want to be sympathetic when we should actually be empathetic with our students. We should not actually be sympathetic because that creates that emotional bond. It's trauma bonding with your student about their injury, and it's just going to keep them in a really negative state about it. Also, one of the things is we call it the 48-hour rage period. You're allowed to be pissed off for 48 hours that you're injured. Like, you can say anything you want. You can bitch. I'm here to listen. Everything else like that. After the 48-hour period, I'm going to go from a sympathetic partner to an empathetic partner, and we're going to start making plans. I'm going to help support you going to therapy. I'm going to help support you get into practice. So you, like, when you're just like, I don't feel like going and sitting on the couch because I'm depressed, get the fuck in the truck. And so one of the things is to explain student, injuries happen. Injuries are going to happen. We're a high contact sport, but also teaching them to identify an injury early and how to emotionally process it quickly so they don't go into a denial phase and then cause a permanent injury and you end up with big ass scars like mine. So that's a lot of that processing is taking the amount of knowledge about injuries and the 5 people that are on this show and just applying all that knowledge real early and trusting them.
All right. So we have another question. We kind of covered a good bit of this one, but how do we address failure caused by not breaking a big task into smaller components? So, I guess some people want to go from the beginning to the end, and I think this is more key if we restate this as a coach. How do you tell a student that there's steps in between? Thorfinn, you want to jump on this, Paul?
Yeah, absolutely. So what you're talking about is breaking down everything into baby steps, right? I mean, we can't go from, here to the end product instantly. And so what we have to do is kind of do it in, if your body has to learn all of the different movements in order to do every single blow, right? So if we're doing like a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on the Pell. The reason we do that is you will eventually be able to skip, 1 and 3 and go to, 6 or whatever it is. Learning biomechanics, you cannot shortcut these things. These things are actual just through hard work and focus and doing them properly. I tell people all the time, it's not don't beat up the Pell. The Pell is, not going to fight you, back, but doing the Pell work is going to allow you to then learn the mechanics it takes to go on to the next thing. So I feel that these are don't look at the big picture as one thing. It's all a little movements forward. So.
All right. Tristan, you have anything on that one? I mean, you go from a martial art aspect, you guys actually constantly build, right? You start and you break down everything.
And that's kind of the one thing what I've noticed is when people go to structural martial arts classes, they tend to be a bit more patient than what I've seen of people that get in armor. And there was one common thread though that I did see, and that is when you watch a really skilled martial artist, and this is whether it's in a dojo or it's on the SCA field, and you go, oh, that looks easy. I could do that. And then you go out and you find, I don't know, I've got 2 left feet. I don't even know how to stand. I can't do any of that. And and I've seen many a student get kind of demoralized when they're like, well, they made it look easy. Why isn't it easy? And now they're dealing with kind of that challenge of well, it's harder than it looks. And so I guess if what the question was about a big task, and I was trying to think of, okay, well, what would such a big task, an example be? I guess that would be, well, I want to be good enough to win crown. Well, okay, that's a pretty big task. That's not, you're not going to eat that elephant in one bite. That's going to be, you're going to have to work in stages to not only learn the form, the body movements. Now you have to learn, low level competition. Now you got to learn, more higher pressure competition. You got to be able to fight technicians. You got to be able to fight people that'll just throw the kitchen sink at you. You got to be able to, fight people that are taller, people that are stronger, people that are faster. All of these things. There's a lot to it. And if you don't identify and categorize, all right, what am I going to work on today? What aspect of this huge goal am I going to try to tackle so that I can do it in, logical, achievable steps? Because I think everybody that's gotten into fighting, I know all of us are passionate about it. We said, well, we want to be good at this. I want to be, Knight caliber. I'd like to be Royal Peer caliber. I want to be able to win Crown. Or, those are ambitious goals, but you don't just jump there. And everybody that has tried to jump there that I've ever seen has gotten demoralized and quit just because it's so daunting.
So I think the key there is, look at your major. You can set all these goals. There's a lot of great books. I'll try to find the one I read about that was specifically around goals. And you can set a lifetime goal, and then you set your major goals, and then you set your minor goals, and then you set your macro goals. But you have to think about all of those, write them down, and then work bottom up.
Absolutely.
And that's still remembering where you want to get to at the end. Yep. And there is nothing wrong with that. All right, next one. So we're kind of in the mental tournament piece of the questions. How do you, as a student, address failure to see results in your fights, even though you are training as well as fighting multiple times a week? How do you, as a coach or / teacher, address this? So, here we have somebody working really hard, and I think we covered a little bit of this under the fear episode, believe it or not, or under the fear question. How do we address somebody that's really working hard, but all they're seeing is failure a little bit, and they're not getting past that. And I think we did kind of address this with, have to fight in tournaments, have to, think of that, like the Crepeau idea is like, hey, I can just go there and fight in a tournament. I don't get a hat. I don't have to worry about returning a banner. Or I don't have to do all that stuff. I just get to go and fight. And there may be good people there. I've seen Dukes and everything else fight at Crepeau. But then there may not be as many people there. And you may end up walking out winning. And the key is you go in. Good part about that tournament is you're going in. It's like, there may not even be a knight in this tournament this time. I have a great chance, And so I think you got a fresher mindset, but I think we covered a good piece of this. Is there something else you guys want to cover? How do we address it as a coach to that person? How do we direct them?
I would ask, are they training hard or are they training smart? They might be training hard. They might not be training smart, because sweat alone might not be doing it. Maybe there's something that they're missing there for, how to approach it. Maybe they've got a severe footwork deficiency and all they're practicing is their flat snap.
So I think the key there is they already have a trainer or a coach, and he believes that they're in that place that they probably should be winning, but they're still seeing failure. And I think there's a deeper place. There's that winning mindset that we have to pass to our students.
Yep, absolutely.
So how do we pass that winning mindset?
I think it's easier with direct students than it is with somebody remotely, right? Because you have that contact. Go ahead, Helga. You had your hand up.
I was just about to say, if somebody's trained, like, I'm just going to roll with the training harder, not smarter. Asking them what their victory conditions are, asking them what they're actually working on, and then giving them some direction instead of the keep doing what you're doing, or giving like data dumping them, because a lot of us want to data dump a ton of information at students because we only get them once a week. Is choosing a very specific thing. Like, cool, you're working on your flat snap. Have you thought about how your footwork is affecting your flat snap? And maybe that's the reason why it's not landing right. Like, you're not facing the threat, so you're facing away. So you're giving them freebies on this. And so starting to ask them questions to get them thinking outside of the box that they're currently in, and then helping them redefine goals is really a big one. And doing this, amusingly enough, one of the things that we do in our practice is we openly do this at the end of practice. And so everybody gets together and we talk about like one successful point in our fight tonight, or 1 point of improvement and 1 point of failure, or where we want to like focus on the next one, and does it build into our victory condition set, or do we need to redefine a victory condition? So we turn it into like this big group think thing, and we all watch each other fight too, and so we can come back and be like, yeah, no, that thing that you just said right there, can we rephrase that just a little bit, because it's probably not where you should focus right now. And so this helps a lot. This helped break a couple students out of like that rut where they're just like, I'm just doing all this all the time. You're training it wrong. Like, let's just refocus it a little bit. And they've already jumped out of that plateau, which has been great.
Okay, so I'm gonna kind of wrap this one up. I will tell you know on the mental mindset of this. There are times when you have to let people win. And I hate to say this. I have a lot of people come here and train for Crown, which I don't actually believe in. I train every day for Crown and and build my base. But they come here, and I guarantee you there are people at this practice that probably beat them constantly. I will train them very hard, and then I will tone back. I may not let them hit me all the time, but I will give them some of the best fights they've ever seen towards the very point of time they're going to go to Crown, so they can believe. Because believing you can do something is as important to physically being able to do it. Because I got bad news. All that physicality you have may still not work out if you don't believe. So we have to work both mindsets. And to do that, we have to first know your student really well, right? And then work with them, find events, find places you can go to, and you know, go to a different group like Helga was talking earlier, and find people to fight, and go to another group, find people to fight, find small tourney where you can compete high and farther in the tournament, find all of these kinds of things. But even at practice, you can really help, you know, even on the upper end of that scale, because I've seen too many times that person comes, somebody beats them down all practice, they're going to go to Crown thinking, well, I'm not good enough.
I'm not ready.
But if they come and they perform, they don't even have to win it. But if they perform better than they have ever against somebody, then they're like, oh, I'm ready. If I did that, I can do this. So mental mindset's a hard one, but it's a critical. All right, moving on real quick. And folks, I know we're kind of driving the edge of time. We're going to probably just push a little bit over, because we're actually kind of we've added a few, but we're getting towards the end here. When training emphasizes only skill building and not competitive mindset, are we setting ourselves up to fail when we, got to move the cursor, when we are in a competitive environment? And how can you change that? And I think we were just actually talking about that. You know, I think we were talking about skill building is very, very important, but mentally being prepared to be competitive, and not only be competitive, but to believe you can win is a very big part of that competitive mindset or that competitive environment. All right. Who else would like to cover it? That's my quick 2 cents. Don't be afraid.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Thorfinn.
Okay, so when I started doing this, backstory, I was the kid that was always afraid of the soccer ball. It's soccer practice. So I'm going to tell you, like, when they say, oh, you have to be some kind of super athlete to be successful in this sport, that's not true at all. I was the guy who could not achieve. But the thing is that going into like this idea is that what we want to do is I want to make sure that you build your, like I said, fundamental skill set, and then allows you then to be free in the moment to be in the fight instead of like dragging all these things behind you. So I actually lost track of what we were. Blah, 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 blah. Okay,
competitive mindset.
Yeah, and what for me, it took a moment to say, I actually had to come up with like a little mantra, which was "fuck that guy," right? Because I was too kind. I mean, authentically, I was too kind to hit my friends with this club. You know, I was, oh, what if it hurt them? And then I had to realize that these people were trying to hit me in the neck or, in the groin or wherever else. And I had to say, it's okay for me to fight these people and win these fights. It was okay. Right. So I had to say, I built a little mantra to get me there. Mine was fuck that guy. And over time, though, it's changed now. But I would say, honestly, find that place that it's okay for you to be, allow yourself that space to be successful and to not be afraid to be a little bit violent in the world. We're doing a violent activity. We're actually beating each other with clubs, for God's sakes. If we're doing these things, you have to be okay with the idea that, you could maybe give your friend a bruise, right? And so it takes that big leap. It takes that leap to say, I don't mind doing these things. And so my takeaway is figure out that little fuck that guy thing for you and allow that to be your kind of way to get past this. And so then you've built your skills. You can now trust yourself. Now the part is you have to be okay with the activity. So that's what I'm saying.
Yep. All right. Just a real quick, and I'll try to make it as fast as I can. And then we're going to jump to number 1718. But on that note, I always point out to people that if you're not giving somebody your best, you're actually shorting them, the honor of doing that. So don't hold yourself back, because you're actually hurting your person that you're trying to, your friends, right? So give them what you got, because that's what they want. All right. So it's 1718. Advice for coaches dealing with students, failure after they are given decent advice, and been available. I'm reading this one wrong. Hey, Guillaume, can you kind of cover these? I think you probably have a little bit more. You've probably been talking about this one a bit more.
Yeah, I'm trying to see how to get them posted in a way that I can post them on the screen well, and putting them together isn't working.
Okay.
So let me hide this one. And so 17, advice for coaches dealing with students' mentee failure after they've given decent advice or been available for extra. I'm not sure on the wording on that one, but I think for the question is, if you are a coach and you're working with a student and you're giving advice to that student and the student is not finding success, how do you address that? How do you phrase things differently? How do you find a way to be able to reframe things if the advice that you're giving for a student isn't working for them?
And that's actually, I think that's a great question, because this is the, hey, you're speaking the wrong language. Maybe you're speaking the wrong language to your student, right? I mean, there are times I walk over to Rongvalder and like, hey, Rongvalder, can you explain this? And then they're like, oh, I got it. They need it from somebody else.
And then the other part of the question was lack of effort by the mentee. Like, how do you address when your student is not putting in the work? If you're giving them advice, you're trying to give them coaching and guide them along, and they're falling short on their end of the agreement.
Ooh, Helga, I'm going to throw that second one at you just because I think you have some feels on that one. As far as that first one, Tristan, I mean, as a martial artist coach, you don't often you have a class full of people that you kind of have to teach, and that language difference, that how people learn, is difficult for you, right? Because you're
absolutely
kind of one
in
way
fact,
to everybody.
This is one of the reasons that I always liked seeing other instructors teach, because each of them would have their own language. And
I love that part.
Learning how to rephrase things that other instructors use to describe and have it resonate with their students, it pays to basically be multilingual, right? To find the language that a student will resonate with.
No, I do spend. I agree with 100%. Most of my growth comes from all the coaches on this show that I keep listening to, and I'm like, man, I could do so much stuff better.
Yep, the mountain doesn't have a top; it doesn't have a peak.
Oh man.
So Yalisha has a follow-up that she put in the chat that I'm gonna share. How do you as a coach deal with someone else's failure as a mentor? You're seeing failure in the person that you're mentoring. How do you deal with that? How do you process that as a coach?
All right, Helga, that one's kind of on the same topic as the one I asked you to cover.
All right. So this is where I get to do assessments on myself. 1, am I using the correct language? 2, is my student overwhelmed, or have I not set them up for success? 3, have they not set themselves up for success? Amusingly enough, we just had this. This came up with Paul's episode, actually, where we're talking about he just failed in a tournament and got super in his way. And one of the things is he and I are training buddies all the time. I didn't set him up for success. He was cooking dinner for camp, and it was a torchlight tournament. And then none of us took over for him. None of the rest of us were fighting that night. We were all there to watch him fight. Not a single one of us stood up and said, "You shouldn't be cooking dinner." So we didn't mentally prep him for something. And so the first place that I'm going to look for in this is a fault in myself. I'm beyond anything.
Bravo, accountability. Bravo.
Yeah.
We
and
have
growth, right?
just made a little checklist for everybody in camp that says, "Are you fighting in the tournament? Is it before or after dinner?" Before dinner or after dinner, you're not allowed to sign up to cook dinner. But always look for you're failing at yourself as a coach. Also, this is the first thing I do when I get butted at practice. Have I not made it so they feel safe enough to get feedback? Have I tried to help them reset their mind on this? Or are they just not in a place to hear this feedback and I should walk away? And this is where sometimes at practice, we have a couple of us are super neurodivergent. I'm going to throw myself in there. And we actually had a person that was basically nonverbal under stress. We gave them a puck that is like an off-on button. It's like the puck you use at the steakhouse, and they just leave it by their helmet. And if it's red, all of us know to leave them the fuck alone. If it's green, they're open to instruction.
Love it.
If they feel pressured, they can't actually say no. And so we try to come up with a different way for them to say no to us without feeling like they're rejecting us, because that's a huge thing for them. And so realistically, anytime, it's turn that accountability towards yourself as a coach. And then also understand at some points, you're not going to be the right coach for somebody at that point in time. And your success is not tied to them at any given moment. Your success is tied into making them feel safe enough to continue to play. And sometimes that's not with you.
Can't agree more. Yep. So, and I have to say, I do that a lot. And there are better teachers at lower levels than I am. And there's oftentimes I'll have somebody and I can see that it's just not working. And I'll be like, "Hey, I got a great teacher for you." And I bring him over to somebody a little lower level because I forgot, this is stupid. I forgot all the basics and how easy they are or how hard they are because they're easy for me. So you don't tend to, as when you grow as a coach, be careful because we don't tend to explain the easy things anymore. We jump right into the details and that overwhelms students fast. So I think you guys both covered this really well. And that is like, as a coach, look at yourself, how you could do it better, right? What do we need to do? We need to communicate better. Maybe we need to learn a different way to present stuff. And, just make sure you're not at the end and you're the best coach in the world or anything else. It's not about you. It's about them getting better. So.
It's a good opportunity to remember that we as coaches are all still learning too. We're learning how to coach and we're continuing to learn our craft. Mm-hmm. And so we are still going to see failure just as much as anyone else will see failure in anything else they're doing, and treat it as an opportunity for learning and growth.
Can't agree more. All right. Well, I'm hoping everybody enjoyed that episode. I know I did. And I know I really love hanging around all these folks. So I apologize. Helga, thank God Helga's on and can do like multitasking because I try. And it really, my multitasking is like, I'm here. Oh, I'm on mute. Oh, I'm on. So it's very poor.
Only once tonight. Only once.
Oh, no, you didn't catch the other 3 times I did it. While I was just talking and you guys just kept talking. I'm like, are they hearing me? Oh, no, they're not. No.
Okay.
So we had four this episode for you.
Yeah, not so great.
That good on the accountability for fessing up to it.
So I'm just gonna butt in and say this out loud. I said this in the chat. is I want to thank you guys so much. And I want to thank everybody that submitted questions. I wish I had had these conversations as an adult or when I was frustrated and coming through injury. And so I want to say thank you to everybody that submitted a question and got this process started and has continued to like submit questions to Coach's Corner. We're here because you guys do this. And for all the coaches that showed up for this, like, thank you very much, because this is a vulnerable subject and it's a hard subject to continue to hold space around, especially when we all want to be like, but we're perfect and we got here and it's fine. And so I just want to say thank you very much, because there were some really raw, real conversations, and they have been this entire series, and it's super neat.
Yeah, I can't agree more. It's been fun to see the engagement on these. It's been I think it's something we wanted to help folks with, and thanks everyone out there for letting us at least talk about it and hopefully help, even if maybe we didn't help you, hopefully it helps somebody else that was listening. And we have 3 episodes out there now. Send some folks out to there. If you find people that are having some issues, tell them to go listen to the shows. They may find something we've said that makes a difference to them. But all we can do is keep growing. And that's, I think, the biggest piece. All right, so we're going to wrap this up. Anybody have anything else quickly to say?
Thanks for letting me be part of this. It was super fun, and keep rock and roll in your heart.
Sometimes the most nourishing discussions are not necessarily comfortable, but the end result is a great opportunity for positive growth.
All right, I got one more question. Thorfinn, do you got pants on? All right, just checking. Yeah.
So, background here. When the call to arms came, I said, well, I'll get up and put pants on. And by the way, I had pants on the whole time. I thought it was a clever joke. But also, I would like to point out that you all questioned if I had pants on. So this says a lot about me. So anyway, love you guys.
I want to thank everyone for coming out. Thank coaches, for all the coaches that did this series. Thanks to all the viewers who came out and listened to this and hopefully got something from it. The best part about all of this is other people get the chance to watch it later and grow as well. Next week, we're actually going to cover a quick topic on, and it's a pretty light topic. I mean, we've been into hard topics here for a while, but we have somebody that helps us with our graphics, and she has been doing stuff in the society, this thing in a society for, I can't tell you how long, and it makes a huge difference to so many people, and that is Adopt a Jock program. I don't know if many people have heard about it, but Her Grace, Maisie, is an incredible person. She puts sewers together with brand new fighters, or even fighters that don't have the ability to sew. And they make tunics, and they build those relationships between the sewers and somebody. So they both get a feel as like, hey, this is what I did. They can talk about, they went to tournaments. They're using it at fight practice, all of those things. And that really brings our community together. And it's such a cool thing between kind of that ANS and fight environment that we don't talk about and we don't think about that much. But Maisie really made this something. And she has with her just somebody who just stepped down, who actually used that program to when they started. So it really does make a huge difference. And I'm looking forward to covering that in the show. So looking forward to everybody next week. And thank you. And I hope everybody has a wonderful weekend, the rest of the week, and a wonderful weekend. Be safe out there. Have fun. And get the fight on.
Have a good night, everybody.
Night, everyone.
Night.